Hi, I'm Marisa, a publisher at Oxford University Press, Southern Africa, and I'm going to discuss a few basic style guidelines for writing a textbook. A textbook is quite a different creature from an academic work, journal article, or dissertation. First of all, there is the pedagogical imperative. You want to make sure that knowledge is scaffolded via conceptual bridges in order to move the student from familiar knowledge to unfamiliar knowledge in a logical and structured way. The style of writing must support the pedagogy of the book. In this presentation, I'm going to refer to a few guidelines and then illustrate them by means of examples. Firstly, you want to ensure that the book is readable. Remember that many Generation Y students prefer on-screen reading and may not necessarily read lengthy books for pleasure. You should also consider that many students do not have English as a home language. So ensure that the language used is accessible and facilitates rather than obscures meaning. Use headings and subheadings in a logical way. Too few headings and long tracts of text make for dense reading, whereas too many subheadings make the text bitty and meaning equally difficult to grasp. Use headings to present the key idea being covered in each section. Use innovative ways of making the text less dense. For instance, where possible, opt to illustrate a process with an example of how the process would work in practice, rather than the written description of a process. Use bulleted lists judiciously rather than filling a page with them. The opposite end of the extreme of dense, unbroken text is a page full of bulleted text and one-line paragraphs. This reads like a set of course notes or a practical manual. Bulleted text is useful to break up text, but you still need sufficient discussion and explanation for students to engage with the concepts. Address the reader in the second person when giving guidelines. For example, now that you have read the case study, you will see how the concept of X applies to Y in situation Z. Use we or let us. When formulating a conclusion based on a foregoing argument, refer to yourself, other academics in the field, and the reader by using we or let us. Use the active rather than the passive voice whenever possible. For example, in naturalistic observation, the researcher observes the behavior under investigation as it plays out in a natural setting, not behavior is observed by. Present content in small, manageable chunks and use short or medium-length sentences. Avoid linking multiple phrases together by using and. Instead, consider breaking long sentences into shorter chunks, either by using suitable punctuation, such as commas or semicolons, or by breaking the sentence up into completely separate sentences. Use signposting to facilitate navigation through a text. A student needs to know where they are, where they have come from, and where they are going. Always try to have in mind the notion of helping the student to build a mental map of each chapter. The student should have a sense of the direction in which the chapter is taking them, what they are going to cover, and why. Unpack jargon by ensuring it is clearly defined. Don't define jargon with jargon. For example, instead of DNA is formed from the polymerization of nucleotides, try DNA is formed from the joining together of small subunits called nucleotides. Don't assume the take-home message is obvious. You need to clarify figures and tables in order to stimulate a deeper level of engagement with the text. Diagrams and tables are used to supplement the written text, and each should have a take-home message, what it is you are expecting the student to take away from having looked at the diagram or table. Provide a commentary so that the take-home message is clear. Present direct statements that are substantiated rather than introduced by clauses such as I assert, I argue, I contend. create interest and a link to the next section. I mentioned the role of signposting words. You can also refer to forthcoming content with a short note on what to expect. The next section will therefore look at the research that is focused on the outcomes for children who are raised by unmarried single mothers, whose parents separate or divorce, and who experience the death of a parent during childhood. Use referencing judiciously in textbooks. You do not need to reference published authors for facts. For example, there are 11 official languages in South Africa. You also do not need to reference your own assessment of a particular issue. Try to avoid excessive referencing in favour of drawing on your own expertise in the field. Use referencing only when presenting a unique idea or original concept. It is fine to paraphrase a concept when reporting back on research in order to advance your own argument. If you refer to preceding published research or a previously developed argument, you need to reference the first time this was discussed. This includes referencing yourself, where you have previously discussed a similar issue in another book, journal article, or even your own thesis. You would need to refer to the first instance you discussed the topic. For example, in Montemarano 2002, I discussed this concept. Use preceding research as a stepping stone to draw your own conclusion. For example, you would refer to preceding research such as South African research suggests that children whose parents have died from an AIDS-related illness may be particularly vulnerable to developing emotional problems. Kluwer, Gardner and Operario, 2007. In order to understand these research results and give your own conclusion. These are just a few pieces of advice that assist our authors in the writing process. Should you have any other questions, you are more than welcome to contact us at Oxford University Press, Southern Africa. We look forward to hearing from you.